Here to discuss his proposal on compensating those who were wrongfully imprisoned, we have Senator Ron Latz. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Julie.
Senator, let's begin with explain just how your proposal would work.
The proposal is for persons who are exonerated after they've been convicted, served some time, and then new evidence is developed or a reevaluation of old evidence, and they're actually back in court and a judge declares that the evidence was insufficient to convict them, that it looks like they were innocent, and actually vacates the conviction and exonerates them. Then the conclusion is they were wrongfully imprisoned. And when they are released, the question is, should the government do anything to assist them in getting back on their feet, to compensate them for having spent years behind bars, away from their families, not earning a living, and what should we do as a government? So this proposal is our response to that question.
At your news conference, when you announced this legislation, there were two men there who this had happened to, the two known cases in the state. Encapsulate for us, if you can, what their story is and how this could help them.
Sure. Well,
or others like them.
Yeah. Well, these are the two people that in the last 5 years were in this situation. There are some others that go back further, and there are others, of course, in other states in the country. That's why there are 29 states, plus the District of Columbia, plus the federal government that already have similar statutes to what I'm proposing here for compensating exonerees. In this case, there were two individuals. One we might already be familiar with, or the audience might be, because it involved the individual who drove his car. It was a Toyota, and the accelerator stuck, and he hit another vehicle on the off-ramp and caused a death as a result of that. He was convicted, but then later on, more information came out about Toyota's acceleration pedal sticking, and 3 years later, that evidence was reevaluated in court, and a judge exonerated him, declared that he had been innocent, actually, and was released from prison. The other case is someone who spent 7 years in prison for conviction for killing his infant child. It turns out that when everything was reviewed after the Minnesota Innocence Project took up the case, went back, brought in some additional experts, reviewed the evidence, the science, brought in some mechanical experts as well to look at the physical injuries to the child, that the overwhelming weight of the evidence was to conclude that the child had died from a head injury that had been sustained 4 or 5 days earlier in falling from a shopping cart, not relating to anything that the individual was charged with causing the death. So he was exonerated after spending almost 7 years behind bars.
And you're talking about a variety of time spent behind the bars. So how would this bill work? Would it compensate according to how long somebody was behind, was in jail wrongfully, or is there kind of a cap on it? How do you anticipate the financial part of this playing out?
The way the bill is written, it would be a sort of default payment of $50,000 per year of wrongful incarceration. There would be a total cap of payment or compensation of $700,000, and there would be some discretion in there for the administrative law judge to evaluate the individual case to see if there are particular circumstances that would justify a payment in excess of $50,000 per year. For example, if someone was a particularly high earner at the time, so that their wage loss or economic loss would be greater than $50,000 a year. And this is typically the way damages in tort cases are evaluated. You look at what's their lost wages and so on. If they had particularly young children and they were gone for a long time, so their kids grew up without them, might be an egregious situation as well. And then there's another piece to this bill, which is transitional costs for reintegrating into the community. Right now, if someone is convicted and they serve their time and they are released at the end of their sentence, still being convicted, not exonerated, the state provides transitional programming for them to reintegrate into society so they'll be successful and hopefully not commit new offenses. Help finding housing, help with job placement or workplace training, those kinds of things, maybe ongoing chemical dependency treatment or assistance in getting into locally based programming like that. When we release someone who's been exonerated, their conviction's been vacated, they've been declared innocent essentially, we don't give them anything more than a pat on the back and wish them good luck. But they too have been away from their families and from the workplace. They've probably lost their jobs, may have lost their homes, may have lost their families. And so they're in a real tough position. We should give them the same kind of transitional help that we give others.
Senator, we are almost out of time here. As you mentioned earlier, there are 29 other states that have similar statutes. Did you pattern this after those, or did you find things that were not working in other states and changed our legislation accordingly?
Yeah, there were some other states that, for example, left it up to individual bills in a legislature on a case-by-case basis, and we didn't think that was the right way to go. It leaves it far too open to politics, and the dollar amounts might vary, and no consistency there. So we set up a program that would have some consistency, for one thing. But what we don't have right now in Minnesota, and maybe someday we will, is someone who spent, say, 25 or 30 years behind bars on a rape or a murder conviction, and later DNA evidence determines they weren't the person that committed the crime. Those are really egregious cases. And that's happened in other states. Illinois has had a few of those cases. And so we may look at how we're going to handle those kind of cases too.
Okay, Senator Ron Latz, we are out of time, but thank you for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Julie.